Around 7:30 p.m. on Friday, I visited Toby's Bar and Grill. In the bustling metropolis of New York, I was exhausted from 2 days of negotiations with a renowned international bank. Initially, I was pessimistic about the possibility of reaching any agreement. However, as the Friday meeting progressed, unresolved challenges began to resolve themselves one by one, like a series of falling dominoes. By noon, only 2 significant obstacles remained. We decided to take a break and refuel, opting to have lunch out. I found the nearest Jewish deli and indulged in an incredibly hearty pastrami and Swiss cheese on rye bread sandwich, savoring every bite. When we reconvened at 1:30 p.m., the bank's chief negotiator, George Willis, said, "We've made tremendous progress. I suggest we compromise on the last 2 issues." George passed the documents across the conference table, and I read his proposed suggestions. It was by no means an equal compromise, but it was easily within the range acceptable to my partners and me in order to secure the large contract. I scribbled my initials on the document, and George said he would send me the official contract via email on Monday. After shaking hands, we went our separate ways. I returned to the hotel, packed up, and checked out. I considered spending the night in the city since my fiancée, Trish, was away for the weekend with her 2 sisters. They were staying at a large Indian casino in Connecticut, planning to spend their days at the pool and spa and their evenings at the finest bars and restaurants. But I decided not to spend another night away from home, so I headed to Grand Central Station and took the Metro North train to New Haven. By 7:30 p.m., I was on the I-91 heading towards Hartford. After exiting the highway, I was passing through the always popular downtown West Hartford, where I decided to stop for dinner. As I sat in Toby's Bar, I noticed my 2 future daughters-in-law through the mirror behind the bar. They slid into a horseshoe-shaped table with their husbands beside them. A knot immediately formed in my stomach, and the pain seemed to spread through every inch of my body, telling me that my wedding plans, exactly 8 weeks before the wedding, were in trouble. My sisters-in-law were supposed to be with Trish at the casino. I left the bar and called Trish, who said, "Hello, my love, how's the big city?" "Everything's the same as always. We successfully concluded the negotiations, and I'm about to go have dinner. I wish you were with me." Trish said, "You're so sweet, Chris, I miss you too. We've had a delightful time all day, lounging by the pool and sipping cocktails. I got a great pre-wedding tease. I'm going to have dinner with my sisters in a few minutes." Trish and I chatted for a bit, then said I love you to each other and ended the call. I checked the Find My app and entered Trish's information. I wasn't sure where Trish was, but her phone number showed up in Falmouth, Massachusetts, on the western end of Cape Cod. Damn, I thought, Trish's longtime neighbor and friend, Nick Flaherty, had a family vacation home in Falmouth. We had been invited there several times. Looking through my contact information, I found Sue Flaherty's phone number and called. Sue answered, and I said, "Hello, Sue, this is Chris Harrington." Sue said, "Chris Harrington, what a pleasant surprise. How are the wedding plans coming along? Nick and I can't wait for the celebration. To be honest, I'm not sure how the plans are going." Sue laughed and said, "This is a typical male reaction." I told Sue that Nick had gone away for the weekend. Sue said it was a strange question. Nick hardly ever travels on weekends, but he had gone away this weekend. "What's going on?" Sue asked with slight concern. I asked if you have the Find My app on your phone. Sue sobbed involuntarily and almost whispered, "Not again." A minute later she continued, "He's supposed to be in Philadelphia, but Beacon shows he's at the family cottage on Cape Cod." I sighed sadly and said, "I'm sorry, Sue, Nick is with Trish." Sue cried quietly for a few minutes. She admitted this wasn't the first time. "I'm going to call that jerk and tell him not to come home. I asked if you could do me a favor, Sue. Trish won't be home until Sunday afternoon, and the same for Nick. Let's postpone our confrontation until tomorrow night. In the meantime, I plan to change the locks on my apartment door and withdraw half of the wedding money from our joint account. I'll pack all our clothes and other personal belongings and leave the bags on the driveway." "You're absolutely right, Chris. I'll do the same thing. Please write or call if you need to talk to someone. I'm sorry I had to tell you. Sue started crying again, sobbing, "It's not your fault, Chris. My last call was to Billy Jones, a friend and neighbor. I need help, Billy. Are you home tomorrow morning? My only plan is to sleep in until noon, but Sally will wake me up at 7 a.m. What can you do for me? Can you replace my front door locks and the door locks to the garage and change the password for your garage door opener? I would really appreciate it." Billy was silent for a moment, then said, "Damn it, is the wedding off? Unless I missed something important, Trish and I are done." "I understand, I'll take care of it first thing tomorrow morning and change everything." Fitz, "Yes, Billy, thank you." I felt like I had aged 20 years. Dragging my heavy steps, I returned to Tope's and headed towards the bar. I looked at my daughter's daughter-in-law and their husbands in the mirror, and as the waiter cleared the appetizers, I grabbed a bar stool, clutched my drink, and walked towards the table of my former future family. The atmosphere quickly turned cold as I sat on a stool at the end of the table, crawled into the seat, and glared between Julie and Karen. "Chris, man, come over and check out the menu," said Karen's husband, Steve. Without taking my eyes off the women, I replied, "No, thanks, Steve, I won't be staying long." I continued to silently stare at Julie and Karen until Julie's husband, Roy, asked, "What's going on, Chris?" "Ask your wife, Roy." Roy and Steve turned to their wives, and it was easy to see that both women were terrified. "What happened?" Steve asked the sisters. Karen spoke first. "It's not what you think, Chris." I thought that was exactly what I thought. Steve and Roy looked at their wives and me, and as tears streamed down Karen's cheeks, Steve asked again, "What's going on, Chris?" "Your wives were covering for Trish. They were all together last Tuesday in my kitchen because I wasn't coming back until Sunday night, and they were planning to spend the weekend at Foxwoods Casino." "Where's Trish?" Roy asked the sisters. As they fell silent, he turned to me. "She's at Nick's in Cape Cod." "That's true, Steve history." At that moment, both women were crying. Karen nodded in agreement. Julie said, "Trish really loves you, Chris." "She really does." Steve rolled his eyes, and Roy, staring at the table, said, "That's a great way to show love." "She lied to me and had a weekend of sexual revelry with her old neighbor just 8 weeks before she was supposed to marry me." "Your sister is a bitch." "Don't dare," Roy interrupted his wife. "Shut up, Julie." Turning to me, he asked, "What are you going to do?" "I'm obviously going to call off the wedding." Both friends leaned back in their chairs, and their wives cried harder. "Dad has spent a lot of money on the wedding and reception," Karen sobbed. "I don't care, I won't marry a liar and cheat like Trish." I waited a moment, and we talked with Sue Laherty about Nick and Trish's deception, and how we all enjoyed crushing them a day before the 24-hour mark. Nick and Trish's deception, we all enjoyed crushing them a day before the 24-hour mark. 4 pairs of eyes looked at me as I asked, "Roy and Steve, I need your help. Can you ensure that," my head turned to their wives, "can you ensure that they don't contact Trish before 6:15 tomorrow night?" Both women started to protest, and then Steve said, "Of course, man." Then turning to his wife, he said, "You make me sick. I can't help but wonder if your sisters really supported you when you cheated on me." Karen was stunned, and Steve continued, "If you or Julie were involved with Trish in any way, I would consider filing for divorce." Roy's face turned red with anger, and his words made Julie sadly moan as he said, "We had problems at the start of our 3rd year of marriage. I could have filed for divorce anyway, but rest assured, if you contact Trish, I will apply." I shook hands with the 2 men and left the restaurant. Saturday was busy, taking me several hours to remove the last traces of Trish from our house. Instead of piling up the driveway with garbage bags, I rented a small warehouse, and my neighbor Billy lent me his pickup truck. It only took 3 trips to get all the bags to the warehouse. The most difficult part was writing the letter to our wedding guests. I worked on the email in chunks all day. It said subject, Harrington and Clark Wedding News, "Dear friends, I am currently in the midst of my wedding. just 8 weeks away from the wedding day with Trish Clark. This weekend was spectacular because I discovered Trish spending her weekend in bed with another man. Trish and her longtime neighbor Nick Flaherty deceived me, along with Nick's wife, and the lies of the sisters Trish, Karen, and Julie. The couple spent the weekend in Cape Cod. You might wonder why I found this terrible behavior impressive. The reason is simple: I didn't marry Trish. Calling off the wedding is much easier than going through the pain of divorce. This letter is my formal notification that I am calling off the wedding with Trish Clark. Sincerely, Christopher Harrington. At 5:30 p.m. on Saturday, I called Sue Flaherty, and we discussed what we could accomplish together. We agreed to send messages to our partners at exactly 6 p.m. My message was simple, saying, "I hope you enjoyed your weekend with Nick. Thank you for showing the world that you are a liar. A cheater. Our wedding is canceled." I sent this message exactly at 6 p.m. and then immediately sent emails to our families and guests. 16 months later, I stood at the edge of the altar. My best man and groomsmen by my side. The bridesmaids looked stunning. As they walked down the central aisle of the church, tears welled up in my eyes. As I looked towards the back of the church, Trish's father stood proudly. In his black suit. His eyes, like mine and all the other guests, were focused on the most beautiful bride in the world. Her blonde hair was meticulously arranged, looking beautiful under a small white veil. Her blue eyes sparkled with the light of love. Her dark red lips hinted at the naughty thoughts of our upcoming wedding night. The tight white wedding dress accentuated her figure, without making her look wanton. It was wonderful. As Mr. Clark and my fiancée walked down the aisle towards me, I felt a pair of eyes staring at me. I looked at the guests on my side of the church, then looked to the bride's side. And that's when I saw Trish. Tears streaming down her cheeks. I saw her whisper, "I'm sorry." Then she turned to her father and sister and walked towards me. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you like it, please consider liking and subscribing. If you haven't already, feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.